Well, I guess this is I think the part of the cast I was looking forward to the most. I want everybody to give me at least two. Everybody's gonna give two or three different examples of vampire lore, things, ironclad ways if you ever encounter a vampire that you can either kill it or stave it off to give away. I mean, to be able to escape. Um, we'll start with Taryn, and then we'll go to Steve, and then we'll go to Jason and see the different answers that we get. Taryn.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Different lore about vampires, things that you've learned about them throughout the different types of medias that have reigned true through all of them. Example, garlic, or stake in the heart, silver bullets, whatever have you. Give me three. Any three you got. They could be new and interesting ones that we might not have heard of now that we know that vampires are a lot more sexualized than I realized before. It could be, an orgy's a good way to, I don't know, distract the vampires. Like, hey guys, here's an
orgy. A Greco-Roman death orgy. That's what you need. You find yourself a vampire.
I don't know. But, Taryn?
Oh, that's actually really hard. I'm trying to think of something that's been consistent. The first thing that comes to mind is the desire for life in some form. In the 17th century, life was believed to be contained in the blood. So it was thought that that's why vampires drained the blood, because they were trying to restore life to themselves. And vampires during that time were actually thought to be kind of like zombies. They were people who died and then came back, and they would drain blood from people to try to live again, in a sense. So I guess the desire for life, whether it be through something literal like blood or through maintaining a sense of humanity through relationships. All right, so that is one. Even though we don't necessarily have the religious aspect as much now, I would say that they are thought of to be something, if not necessarily evil, but supernatural, so that they are not of the natural world, that they're this other thing that belong to this different realm. And a third thing is that even though they have been portrayed to be immortal, they can still be killed. You have the stake through the heart. You have the chopping off of the head, which is really interesting, that you can kill this unkillable creature, or this immortal creature that can still die.
Okay, Steve, over to you.
So this is like my favorite topic by far, because this is one of the reasons that I love retelling myths. I love when myths are retold, folklore, anything like that, because you do have this like freedom of, well, I love when people say like, well, how don't vampires get killed when blah? And it's like, well, they're not real, dude. Like, they're not real. Make up your own rules. You can cherry pick what you like. You can do whatever. So there are obviously some common things. Back in the day,
half the fan base.
We know stake through the heart. Obviously, that's like the big one. A stake through the heart. A big one too.
Stake, right?
What's that?
A wooden stake, right?
See, there's the thing. Well, does it have to be wooden? Sometimes it was like, oh, it had to be consecrated wood. Sometimes it's like, oh, it has to be a piece of friggin' Noah's Ark. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's got to be this. It depends on the story. Sometimes it's just one thing. And there was this one Buffy episode, I think it was the one in season 2 or something, where there was like an alternate reality. Right. And they went back, and like Angel was like a total pansy, and he was in a cage, and I think like Xander might have been a badass or something, but Buffy had like a scar on her face, and she was like this, Mad Max version of herself or something. And she says something like, oh, whatever it is, just stick a stake through its heart. And they're like, we don't even know if it's a vampire. And she looks at him and she's like, you'd be surprised how many things that'll kill. Right. It's like, so, so it's kind of whatever you like, but to one last time, I'll go back to my books, because I know it's getting annoying, but I did this. Like, this was fun to be able to play with these tropes. And so the one thing that I always thought was the silliest, weirdest thing is garlic. You mentioned garlic, right? So that's like so weird. Like, I always as a kid thought that was the dumbest one of all the things. Why garlic? And so, you can make up why. Why do you think garlic? Think about it. So the solution I came up with was, well, I think it stands to reason that this vampire has more acute senses than we do. They see better, they hear better, they also smell better. Garlic reeks, right? So if you had a bunch of garlic, they would not enjoy it. It's not like it causes them physical pain, but they're not gonna enjoy that. So, you know, I made that sort of play into the book in a different way, but you know, I think it's fun to have these tropes that are based on like little kernels of things that are folkloric things we've heard a million times, and I love how people will take it and do different things with it. And with Buffy, it was really fun to always see them play with the different tropes.
Oh yeah.
You know, they Buffy, okay, yes, a stake through the heart, sunlight. But they didn't ever do a thing like, oh, they did vampires can't be invited into your house. But there's also a thing, vampires can't cross running water. That's an old thing that was in a lot of different vampire stories. Buffy was like, yeah, it causes too many problems. We don't need that. So, okay, cool. Like you just cherry picked, you know, the things that you wanted. And that's what was so great about it. So, I mean, I don't know. I like beheading. Beheading kills everything. You'd be surprised how many things that'll kill.
Exactly. Yeah. The heading is definitely, no matter what, one of the top ones. Jason, over to you.
So I also like the cherry picking. My probably personal favorite doesn't have as much folklore behind it, other than a few sources, and probably the biggest one that I know of is Bram Stoker himself. But the soil from their homeland being where they rest or where they sleep at night. My favorite iteration of this, beyond any shadow of a doubt, is Vampire in Brooklyn. When Eddie Murphy opens that casket and he's sleeping in beach sand because he's supposed to be like from Jamaica or from the, I can't remember exactly where he's from, but he's got all beach
some
sand.
Caribbean island or something.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is. I honestly think to this day I'm the only person that watched that caught that of my peer group, because nobody else even really, they just thought it was dirt. And I'm like, no, guys, it's beach sand. The dude is in beach sand because he's from an island. They're like, oh, I didn't get that, but I thought that was fantastic. They don't even talk about it. They just have him getting out of sand. I thought it was gangster.
I like that movie. I actually like that movie.
I really like that movie. That movie was hilarious, man.
I really like it. It's got a great cast too. It's so underrated, and it's Wes Craven.
People. And then probably after that, the combination kills. I agree with you guys. I've always wanted to write some kind of even if it was just a short story about a vampire hunter who is being chased by the police because he's mastered his, I guess, martial arts style based off of killing vampires. And if you've killed 100 vampires, you probably are killing rando people in a very specific way. You know, like just if you're Wolverine, you have your own martial arts style. And if you're a vampire killer, if you're Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you got some pretty specific tactics down. So you'd be probably staking rando guy in the alley through the heart because that's something you've done with rote memory over and over and over again. So ultimately, the whole cut off their head, burn them, scatter the ashes, or put the ashes in running water, I love all of that, because even if they're not a vampire, it's a pretty good way to make sure somebody's dead. You know, if they're not Vlad the Impaler, but they're just a witch, they're probably dead. If you cut off their head, burn their body, and scatter their ashes in running water, they're probably not coming back. That's just a good way of doing it. But then my third would have to be the undead aspect. For me, the crucial thing is that they died, and now they're not dead. Undead, not just immortal, but undead is actually my most crucial point for vampire folklore.
Okay. Wow. For me, and actually, Steve's got that. I'm so jealous of that Castlevania poster in the background. That's where I learned all of the different ways to dispatch a vampire. I mean, don't get me wrong. Before Buffy was a thing, Castlevania was it for me. As far as like, I think that was.
Wasn't it the best game ever when it came out?
Honestly, that and Contra really was like
that Contra, Ghosts and Goblins, Contra,
like,
and
you
Castlevania.
can sit and play these games forever, and I think that was the how I learned different things of how to dispatch vampires, because you're this character that hunts and kills monsters and vampires, and I learned about holy water. I learned about sunlight. Wait, you whip? You got to whip it like Steve said. Got to whip it good. The whip, the different types of metal used in the whips, different types of swords, consecrated ground, all that stuff I kind of learned from Castlevania, and then kind of like throughout, wanting to fact check some of the stuff that was in the, because I'm like, why do they care about holy water? Like they're dead and pretty much invulnerable. What, and it's like, of course, them being supernatural beings from another realm. With the consecrated water and consecrated ground, they're not allowed to, come into a dwelling where they're not welcome because they don't have a soul. And then the different rules. I actually want everybody to give one rule as it relates to vampires. Steve gave a real good one about they're not allowed to come into your house without you actually inviting them in. One of my favorite ones was the reflection thing, that they just did not have a reflection. So if it's like a bunch of ladies in the bathroom while using the bathroom together, and like one of them doesn't have a reflection, she's a vampire. And it's like that. I always thought that was kind of awesome that they didn't have a reflection because they didn't.
You know the origin of that is?
Where was that?
So in Blade, in the Blade movies, he actually they set up that vampires have an aversion to silver in that movie, and that might have seemed like a random thing. We think, oh, silver is werewolves. That's not vampires. The silver thing is actually really old. That is a very, very old thing that you would definitely use to fight a vampire. See, Blade doesn't use wooden stakes; he uses silver stakes. So silver is just one of the metals, along with iron, that supernatural creatures do not like, cannot deal with, and a lot of old mirrors were made with silver backings. So it was all because of the silver, and it was like, oh well, the silver won't reflect the vampire because the metal doesn't like this evil spirit or whatever that's inhabited this body. So it all comes back to silver. So actually, it's interesting. The whole thing, just as a brief aside, that started werewolves in silver was the 1941 movie The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. That was the first time ever that I believe werewolves were linked to having an aversion to silver and also being linked to the lunar cycle. It wasn't ever a thing before that movie. So that is not old folklore. That is old Hollywood. That has just become such a, it's ingrained in us now. We're like, oh yeah, werewolves. Yep. Moon, silver. But in fact, silver was a vampire thing. So it's really, really cool. We're talking about all these rules you can cherry pick. Silver is one of the ones that sort of fell out, but Blade picked it back up.
Nice. Taryn?
My favorite rule probably has to do with sunlight. They're not being able to be exposed to sunlight, which I think, I might be wrong, but I think that probably comes from religious symbolism, where the sun equals the light of God, goodness, purity, etc. And because these things are evil, they're not supposed to be exposed to it. It just burns them, which I guess goes along with holy water. Of course, Twilight destroyed that, where instead of like burning in the sun, they just sparkle like glitter.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the next time you put on your SPF 50, you're evil. Jason, over to you.
So, I guess one favorite rule would be holy water, but only as a placeholder for the religious aspect. I think that part of the reason why vampires have gotten to be sparkly and almost good guys is because we are a much more secular society, which no longer demonizes and villainizes not only sexuality, but also the secular, or not even atheist, but just the lack of holding the religious aspect to be sacred. But there was a time when most of what we currently consider to be vampirism in folklore was based off of them being the evil agents of being against God in a Judeo-Christian way. So holy water, as Taryn mentioned, sunlight, these were all aspects for most of the original folklore of being a religious thing. Right, the sign of the cross or a crucifix. I like all that stuff because I like my monster to be the bad guy and a placeholder for the ultimate bad guy. So I like all of that, but it's easiest to be done with holy water. But going back to what Steve said with silver, I just wanted him saying silver and Hollywood made me think of Silver Bullet, the Stephen King. I want to say it was in the '80s movie about a werewolf as well, and it made me realize that Corey Haim is in one of my favorite werewolf movies and one of my favorite uh, vampire movies because he's in Lost Boys and he's in Silver Bullet, and I didn't realize that and make that connection until Hollywood and Silver were mentioned just a few moments ago. So thank you for that.
Well, I think that's a well-rounded way to bring us to a close. We do have a bit of a giveaway for all of our members, not only from the good people of Amalga-Mania, but also the good people of Retro Red Octopus. We're going to be giving away a Blade poster book, for you vampire enthusiasts to, spruce up and play some, hang a couple of Vampire Daywalker pictures around. All you have to do is let us know in the watch party that you're interested and that you obviously watched the video, and we will be mailing this out to one lucky member. You're welcome. And that brings us to a close. This has been another edition of Amalga-Cast. I'm going to allow everyone to give sort of a plug or any announcements you have of things that might be coming up. I know that Amalga-Mania will be in the building for CharlieCon at 2nd and Charles the 4th, which is Free Comic Book Day. And we will also be at the Washington County Comic-Con at the local library that same weekend on the 5th. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that and hopefully see all you local members there. And then we're going to kick it over to Steve, and then we're going to go to Jason, and we're going to go to Taryn and say adieu, and also give any future announcements or plugs you might have for the members. Steve?
So thanks for having me on, guys. If anybody out there is into like 80s culture, 90s culture, loves to remember what it was like to be a kid in those times, I am a member of Retro Red Octopus. We have a really fun nostalgia podcast. We put out episodes every other Tuesday. We have a really pretty solid growing group right now on Facebook, so please check us out. It's Retro RID Octopus. And you can find us, I'm sure. And these guys are all members, and you'll see them post from time to time. And if you guys are into horror comics, my big recent announcement is that I have been welcomed into the company, the awesome company Rough House Publishing, which is a big move for me, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm going to be joining the company in wearing a few different hats. One of them is going to be writing, and I am going to have my first published story in a comic book will be this year. So I'm really excited. If you guys can check out Rough House Publishing, they're on Facebook, roughhousepublishing.com. There's a pre-order that's going up at the end of May for issue number 2 of their current anthology series, Gore Shriek, which is really fucking nuts, and it is horror comics like your dad used to read. Okay, right. Like it is old style retro shit, and it's fucking brutal. So if that's your thing, check it out.
Awesome. Taryn?
Thank you so much for having me on. I wanted to remind you guys of the auction that will be held this summer. You can currently purchase your tickets, $1 for a regular seat, $5 for a VIP seat. The $1 seat allows you to bid in the Infinite Crisis auction and the other auctions. We have Deadpool, we have Nightwing and Daredevil, and what's the other one, Ian?
Mr. Sinister.
Thank you.
Mr. Sinister has made his first appearance as an action figure in our auction this summer.
And we have some pretty serious contenders for these slots. So if you're interested, go ahead and get your seats now. Also, don't forget about our store at amalgamania.com, where you can buy comic books, you can buy clothes, you can buy action figures, you can get bundles, you can start your collection. So it's just an awesome place to go and shop.
And they do custom orders as well. So for stuff that you can't
Absolutely.
find, if you, hard to find items, you definitely want to give them a. It's just basically another way to search for things and find different rare nostalgia and memorabilia for all things nerd and comic and pop culture. And Jason, over to you.
I just want to thank you guys for having me on and the opportunity to talk about one of my, I guess, fandoms. I don't have anything to plug, so I'm just grateful to be here.
That works. We're all grateful. He's grateful. It's a good way to end it off. Thank you all for joining us on this installment of Amalga-Cast. Please stay tuned. We're going to have many, many more opportunities for you to get to meet many more of our guests and have different topics for you guys to listen to and to mull over and to discuss. Please use your thumbs. Leave any kind of questions or comments or concerns or anything you might want to have your own vampire lore. Leave in the comments, and we look forward to having you all. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on the next cast.